Title suggestion: 17 Stoic rules that created the Roman Empire's greatest philosopher king.
The most powerful man in the world once sat down in a tent, surrounded by the mud and freezing winds of the Germanic frontier, and wrote a secret list. He didn't write a list of his conquests. He didn't write a list of the enemies he intended to crush or the territories he planned to annex. He wrote a list of his debts. In an era where emperors were worshipped as gods, Marcus Aurelius began his private journal, the book we now call Meditations, by admitting that he was nothing more than the sum of the people who had taught him. He claimed that his greatness was not his own, but a borrowed collection of virtues from his mentors, his family, and even his rivals. This is a man who controlled 1/5 of the world's population, yet he believed his most lethal weapon was not the Roman legion, but his own capacity for gratitude. Most leaders today are obsessed with disrupting the world or building a personal brand. Marcus Aurelius was obsessed with something far more dangerous to his competitors. He was obsessed with being a good man. If you think gratitude is a soft emotion, you have already lost the battle. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to look at the cold, calculated strategy of the emperor's mind. We are going to see why a thank you note is the most sophisticated tactical move a leader can make. To understand the weight of these words, you have to understand the year 170. Imagine you are at the edge of the world. You are in Carnuntum, a fortress on the banks of the Danube River, in what is now modern-day Austria. The wind coming off the water is like a knife. You haven't seen Rome in years. You are the emperor, but your bed is a cot. Your boardroom is a tent smelling of wet leather and iron. Behind you, the empire is dying. A plague, the Antonine Plague, is ripping through your cities, killing millions. To your north, the Marcomanni and Quadi tribes have broken the frontier. They are not just raiding, they are coming for the heart of the world. Your treasury is empty. Your generals are exhausted. And your own health is failing. This is not a man writing in a peaceful garden. This is a man writing in the middle of a multi-front collapse. The pressure Marcus Aurelius felt is the exact pressure felt by a CEO facing a hostile takeover while their industry is being decimated by AI. It is the pressure of a founder watching their burn rate exceed their runway. It is the weight you feel when everyone is looking at you for the answer, and you aren't even sure if you'll survive the week. Marcus knew that when the world is in chaos, the mind must be a fortress. But how do you build that fortress? You don't build it with ego. You don't build it with manifesting. You build it by acknowledging the lineage of your own character. This first book of meditations, titled Debts and Lessons, is the blueprint for that fortress. It is a leadership audit. He is looking at his life and asking, where did I get my resilience? Where did I get my discipline? Who gave me the tools to stand here without breaking? Think about the modern cult of the self-made man. We love the story of the individual who rose from nothing by their own grit. Marcus Aurelius would have found that idea laughable and dangerously arrogant. To Marcus, the self-made man is a man who has forgotten his training. In this chapter, Marcus mentions 17 different people. 17 influences that he systematically reviews to ensure he is still living up to their standard. This is the ultimate root cause analysis of a human soul. Before we dive into the specific teachings, ask yourself this: if you had to write a list of everyone who contributed to your current success, including the people who were hard on you, the people who fired you, and the people who raised you, would you find that you've been using their lessons, or have you let them go to waste? Let us begin with the first debt. Marcus writes, "From my grandfather Verus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper." Read that again. The Emperor of Rome, a man who could order an execution with a flick of his wrist, starts his entire philosophy with the government of his temper. Why? Because Marcus realized that a leader who cannot govern himself cannot govern an empire. In plain language, this means that your emotional reactions are a form of data, but they are also a form of weakness.
If a subordinate can make you angry, that subordinate now controls you.
If a competitor can frustrate you, they have dictated your strategy.
Consider the case of Satya Nadella taking over Microsoft in 2014.
The company was famous for its internal temper, a culture of aggressive infighting and stack ranking where employees were encouraged to sabotage each other.
Nadella didn't come in with a new software suite first, he came in with nonviolent communication.
He channeled the government of temper he learned from his own influences to pivot a toxic giant into a trillion-dollar cloud powerhouse. He realized, just as Marcus did, that the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest mind. The actionable principle is simple: your character is your primary competitive advantage.
If you lose your temper, you lose your edge.
Marcus then turns to his father. He writes, "From the reputation and remembrance of my father, I learned modesty and a manly character." Now, we must be careful here.
Marcus's biological father died when he was only 3.
When he speaks of his father in this context, he is often referring to the memory of him, and later, more extensively, to his adoptive father, Antoninus Pius.
What does it mean to learn modesty when you are the most powerful teenager in the world? It means resisting the purple.
In Rome, the emperor wore robes of Tyrian purple, a dye so expensive it was literally worth its weight in silver.
It was easy to become empurpled, to let the rank consume the man.
Marcus is warning us against the trap of signaling. In the modern world, we see this in the founder who spends their seed round on a fancy office and a PR firm before they have a product. We see it in the manager who insists on a specific title before they've earned the respect of their team. Marcus's father taught him that true manliness, or what we would call integrity today, is found in the work, not the wardrobe.
Look at the legendary investor Warren Buffett.
He still lives in the same house he bought in 1958. He eats breakfast at McDonald's. He has modesty and a character that isn't dependent on the fluctuating price of Berkshire Hathaway. The actionable principle: the more you need the world to see your power, the less power you actually have. Marcus then moves to his mother. He writes, "From my mother, I learned piety, and beneficence, and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts, and further, simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich." This is a shocking statement from a man who lived in the Palatine Hill Palace. He is crediting his mother with his frugality. In leadership, frugality isn't just about money, it's about the economy of energy.
Evil thoughts in a Stoic sense aren't just sinful thoughts, they are unproductive, distracting, and resentful thoughts.
Marcus's mother taught him to prune his mind the way a gardener prunes a vine.
Think of the quiet excellence of companies like Costco. They don't spend money on advertising. They don't have fancy displays. They are far removed from the habits of traditional retail. They focus on the simplicity of living, or in their case, the simplicity of the supply chain. This mother's lesson applied to businesses: eliminate the rich habits that don't add value to the end user. If it's just for show, it's a distraction. The actionable principle: discipline starts with the removal of the unnecessary. Now we get to the mentors. Marcus mentions Rusticus.
This is perhaps the most important entry for anyone who considers themselves a knowledge worker. Marcus writes, "From Rusticus I received the impression that my character required improvement and discipline, and from him I learned not to be led astray to sophistic emulation, and to read carefully, and not to be satisfied with a superficial understanding of a book."
Rusticus was the one who handed Marcus a copy of the works of Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher. Think about that. The emperor is being taught by a man who was once property. Rusticus taught Marcus intellectual honesty. We live in the age of the superficial understanding. We read the headline, not the article. We watch the 60-second summary, not the 2-hour lecture. We emulate the sophists, the people who sound smart on social media but have no depth. Marcus, through Rusticus, realized that reading carefully is a survival skill.
If you understand the core principles of a situation better than your opponent, you don't need to out-hustle them. You will simply outthink them. Look at how Michael Burry discovered the 2008 housing bubble. He didn't look at the sophistic reports coming out of the big banks. He read carefully. He read thousands of pages of mortgage-backed security prospectuses that no one else bothered to touch. He refused to be satisfied with a superficial understanding. He was a modern-day student of rusticus. The actionable principle: depth is a moat. In a world of shallow takes, the person who masters the details is king. The longest and most detailed section of Book I is reserved for Marcus's adoptive father, Antoninus Pius. Marcus lists his qualities like a tactical checklist: constancy, freedom from vanity, industry, readiness to listen to those who had anything to propose for the commonweal, and the habit of checking into things carefully. But there is one phrase that stands out: he was never in a hurry. Think about that. The ruler of the world, dealing with barbarian invasions and economic collapse, was never in a hurry. Hurry is the sign of a mind that has lost control. Hurry is a confession of poor planning. Antoninus taught Marcus that urgency and hurry are not the same thing. You can move with immense speed while remaining perfectly calm. This is the steady hand leadership. When everyone else is panicking, the leader who moves deliberately is the one everyone follows. Amazon's Jeff Bezos often talks about making only 3 high-quality decisions a day. He doesn't hurry. He knows that if he's making 1,000 decisions a day, he's not leading, he's reacting. The actionable principle: speed comes from stillness. If you are rushing, you have already failed to lead. We have spent 15 minutes in the mind of an emperor from 2,000 years ago. But the ancient strategist does not study history for entertainment. We study it for utility. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Book I to be famous. He wrote it to survive. You are going to use his debts and lessons to survive your week. Here are 3 concrete actions you will take in the next 7 days. Action 1: the influence audit. Tonight, take 30 minutes. No phone. No music. Write down the names of the 5 people who have had the greatest impact on your character, positive or negative. For each person, identify one specific lesson you carry from them. Maybe it was a boss who taught you how not to treat employees. Maybe it was a teacher who showed you the value of a superficial understanding being dangerous. By naming these influences, you stop being a passenger in your own personality. You become the emperor of your influences. You decide which lessons to keep and which to government of temper away. Action 2: the reading carefully protocol. This week, pick one complex problem you are currently facing at work or in your personal life. Instead of searching for a hack or a summary, go to the source. Read the full contract. Read the original research paper. Read the foundational book of the industry. Spend 2 hours in deep, focused study of the boring details. Most people are satisfied with a superficial understanding. You are going to find the one detail they missed. That detail is your leverage. Action 3: the Antoninus stillness. At least 3 times this week, when you feel the hurry coming on, when the emails are piling up, when the kids are screaming, when the deadline is an hour away, you will deliberately slow down. You will speak at 75% of your normal speed. You will walk slower. You will take 10 seconds to respond to a question. Observe how the people around you react. You will find that your stillness acts as a vacuum, sucking the panic out of the room and replacing it with your authority. You are practicing the government of temper in real time. Why did Marcus Aurelius do this? Why did he spend his precious time at the front lines writing about his grandfather and his teachers? Because he knew that power is a corruptive force. It is an acid that eats away at the soul. The only way to survive power is to remain grounded in the reality of your own borrowed nature.
Gratitude was not a feel-good exercise for Marcus.
It was his anchor. It was the only thing keeping him from becoming another Nero, another Caligula, another monster of ego. Marcus Aurelius died in that camp on the Danube, 10 years after he began writing his debts. He never saw his notes published. He never knew that 2,000 years later, a person in a world he couldn't imagine would be listening to his private thoughts. But his mind survived because he built it on a foundation of truth. He didn't fight to win the Roman Empire, he fought to win himself. Remember the opening hook, Marcus Aurelius didn't start his legacy with a vision statement.
He started it with a thank you note. If you want to build a mind that can withstand the pressures of the modern world, stop looking forward for a moment. Look back. Find your Rusticus. Find your Antoninus.
Acknowledge the debts you owe, and you will finally have the capital to build your own empire. In the next episode of The Emperor's Mind, we will move into Book 2, where Marcus teaches us how to deal with the most difficult people in our lives, starting with the person in the mirror. If you found value in this strategic breakdown, the link to the full meditations is below.
Study the source. Do not be satisfied with my understanding.
Subscribe if you intend to master yourself.
If not, you're just another barbarian at the gate.